guys, and welcome back. My name is Javier, and today we're going to be taking a look at permanent markers. Why, you ask? Because many of you, including me, use them on the job site, and also because Milwaukee recently introduced a new line of permanent marker, and Milwaukee being Milwaukee gave them a name that sounds familiar. They named them the Inkzall. These markers were intended for use on the job site and have a few extra features compared to regular permanent markers, which is the ability to write on dusty, oily, wet surfaces with quick drying ink, and also has a hard hat clip and a slot for a lanyard. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that I will put those claims to the test and also compare the results with Sharpie permanent markers. I have here a regular black Sharpie with a fine point tip, and I also have a Sharpie Pro with a chisel tip. The regular Sharpie is more of a general purpose marker, and I've used them plenty of times on the job site with great results. The Sharpie Pro is geared towards more demanding applications and is made for writing on wet and oily surfaces, along with having an extra strong tip. I'm looking at the package, and it shows it being used on a concrete block. On the back it says the tip lasts 50% longer, made for abrasive surfaces. We'll just have to see about that. Okay, back to the Milwaukee Inkzall markers. At the time of this video, they come in 3 different varieties. It comes in a fine point tip, a medium point tip, and a 2-in-1 fine point tip marker with a built-in stylus for use on tablets and mobile devices. And like I said before, it comes with a hard hat clip and a built-in slot for a lanyard, so you don't lose them easily. They have a cool design on them, and it sort of gives them that hand tool look. The fine point tip is very fine, and the medium point tip is a lot closer to the tip on the Sharpie fine point markers. So I guess you can call them both fine tip. One fine tip and the other ultra fine. The medium point marker has a flatter shape, and so does the Sharpie Pro, which are great as they prevent the marker from easily rolling around. The Milwaukee markers are all plastic compared to the Sharpie Pro, which has a nice little bit of rubber on the sides for added grip. Alright, so now let's take a look at how they compare and perform. But before I do so, I want to let you guys all know that nobody is paying me to do this, and all the opinions expressed here are my own. I will be using a regular black ink Sharpie with a fine point tip, a black ink Sharpie Pro with a chisel tip, and I'll be using a Milwaukee Inkzall medium point tip. The medium tip on the Inkzall is very similar to the fine point tip on the regular Sharpie, except it's slightly thicker and a little bit longer. Alrighty then, so after using all 3, I have to say that the regular Sharpie has the best ink. It writes the darkest and is the most solid. Its ink comes out nice and black. The Milwaukee came in second with its ink with very great results, although the ink is a little bit purplish, but mostly black. The Sharpie Pro has a nice wide mark with its chisel tip, although it's a little bit faded. When it comes to ink output, the Milwaukee Inkzall had the lead, the Sharpie Pro came in second, and the regular Sharpie came in at a close third. One thing while testing out the markers, I noticed something big with the Sharpie Pro. After removing and reusing the caps on the markers, I noticed that the Sharpie Pro has a sleeve on the inside that comes off the cap and sticks to the marker tip when you remove the cap. Once it did this, it kept on doing this. I removed the sleeve, but then the marker cap doesn't stay on as nicely as it did with the sleeve. It doesn't affect the performance of the ink, but found it to be very annoying. Now let's see how they did with writing on different materials. What I'm really checking for in these tests is how quickly the ink dries. They all did great on wood, which didn't surprise me, as the wood sucks up the ink quick. With laminate flooring, they all did about the same. The ink dries up quickly, but if you touch the ink immediately, it will smear. Next test was on plastic. I used a plastic gallon container. The only ink that didn't smear was a Sharpie Pro. The Inkzall and regular Sharpie both did about the same. This test was done on ceramic tile. They all did the same. They smeared immediately, but didn't after the ink dried. This one was done on metal. What type of metal, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing aluminum. They all did the same, and the ink dried on contact. Next, I used a plank of laminate flooring and divided it into 3 sections for the next test to see how they write on a dusty surface, a wet surface, and an oily surface. I used sawdust for the dusty test, and they all aced that test. I used plain water for the wet test, and the Milwaukee passed this test. Both Sharpies wrote on the surface, but the Pro's ink had better placement, although the ink on both Sharpies didn't adhere well to the laminate as it was easily wiped off. The last test on the laminate I used cooking spray. This test gave out some crazy results, as even the regular Sharpie was able to write on the oily surface. Surprisingly, the Sharpie Pro's ink wiped off completely, and the regular Sharpie had most of its ink stay on the surface after being wiped. This next test was done on tiles because I've been frustrated with permanent markers in the past, as the ink comes off while cutting with a wet tile saw. I marked a dry ceramic tile with each marker and cut it with a wet tile saw. All did great, but the one that was unaffected by the water spray was the Sharpie Pro. Both the regular Sharpie and the Inkzall came in at a close second, as most of the ink was still intact after the water spray. This next test is just for a bit of fun, and I recommend none of you do this unless you want to render your marker useless for a good while. I wet a piece of tile completely and marked it with each marker. The regular Sharpie failed, as its ink didn't do anything to the tile in the puddle of water. The Sharpie Pro did well, as it was able to mark a line onto the tile. I cut the tile to see if the water spray would remove the ink, but the ink was tough and didn't let go. The Inkzall didn't do much better than the regular Sharpie, but part of the ink did make it onto the tile. I cut the tile to see if the water spray would remove the little bit of ink, but the Inkzall ink survived. This last test is to see how durable the tips are. I used a concrete block, since it has a rough surface, and covered it in ink. The regular Sharpie and Inkzall did the same. They both had the same amount of wear. It may look like the Inkzall did a little bit better, but it had more of a tip to begin with. They both took a beating by the block. The Sharpie Pro excelled at the durability test, as its tip was still in great shape. So there you have it, people. Each marker has its strengths and weaknesses. They all did very well, and even the regular Sharpie surprised us all with some of the tests I threw at it. So make sure to like this video and expect to see more crazy comparisons in the future. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on all the craziness. Alright guys, thanks for watching.